You got it? Let's get it!
Hi everyone. Last week I didn't make a weekly update video because my goal was to make one long video of all my stuff together, but it ended up one of the workouts, the clips got messed up, and then just moving the files around didn't work, so I ended up kind of losing files and losing like video like me talking, which I couldn't find or replicate as much as I guess I could. It just would have been more work, and frankly I just wasn't going to do it. So I'm going to try again this week, and I'm going to focus on having two parts, because last week I wanted to record a short video after each one of my workouts, but I found that didn't really work. So in this video I want to talk about, or at least in this part of the video, I want to talk about my Monday workout and my Tuesday workout, the workout that I just did today. Maybe you'll be able to tell I'm a little bit worn out from it. But yesterday on Monday I had bench press first, then squats, then more bench press work, incline, dumbbell bench, squats, and then sumo. I wrote down good mornings, but I ended up doing those today, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. But my squats, the first round of them, went up to 350 pounds for 5 sets of 3, and those were tough, but they were manageable. The first 2 sets I did high bar, and then I moved to low bar with them. Oh, I should talk about my bench was the same. It was up to it was 5 sets of 3 at 235, and those went well as well. My mechanics feel really good with the bench, and then the squats, like I said, 5 sets of 3. First 2 sets high bar, and then low bar for the rest of them. I found that's a really good progression for me. I don't know if anyone else ever does that, but I find that if I'm able to do all my sets high bar and deep squats, then it's more beneficial to me. If I'm not, how am I trying to say this? Once I start grinding weights or start struggling, then I switch to low bar. Then it's like I'm refreshed and I can continue to do squats to depth and able to continue to get the work. I feel like if I did all low bar, I would just get fatigued, and then that would be it. So I can kind of cheat and get more squat in, and obviously the low bar is beneficial because that's what I would use in powerlifting competitions, but also high bar was beneficial because you have a longer eccentric part of the motion, and it's more quad dominant. It's less efficient than the low bar, especially someone that's built like me. So I did on both of the squat things that I did. But after that, on the second round of bench, I decided not to do more bench. I wanted to do close grip bench, and I worked up to 225 for 5 sets of 5 with that. And close grip has been feeling really, really good as of late. I think part of the reason for that is because when if you notice when I bench, I'm really wide, and that's intentional because I want to cut down the range of motion and make it as efficient as possible. And I have the mobility, and I'm able to get the tension in my scapulas, all that kind of stuff with my hands way out there. And it's actually pretty comfortable to have it out that wide. But when I'm that wide, I feel like I'm not using my triceps quite as much. So when I go to the close grip, they're not as fatigued from the bench as they would normally be. And it's a pretty drastic move in from where I am. Plus, with the way my close grip bench is, since I'm so far out with my regular bench, when I move in the close grip, it's still decently wide, so I'm able to still use my chest a little bit, I think, which helps. I was a little bit more when I was doing close grip before, just because my overall grip was closer in, so I wanted to have that difference. But I definitely love how my close grip is feeling right now, and hopefully I'm able to continue to improve on that, because I think last workout it had me do 4 sets of 5, and I did 225 with that, and then 5 sets of 5 on this one, so I'm getting a little bit better. Then I moved to inclined dumbbell bench, which I have not done for a while, but I had a slight incline with them, whatever the setting is or whatever the options are on the bench that I was using. I used the slightest incline that I could, and I used 90s for those. I actually like the slight incline more. I feel like I'm able to get more of my chest into it when I have it up more. I feel like when I start to fail, it's more in my shoulders, which is fine, but I like how the lower incline feels. I feel like it gets more of my upper chest, which is gonna just be beneficial. I think I'd have good carryover. It's a good accessory movement. I like the just incline movements, but dumbbell stuff. The only thing that sucks with dumbbells I will say, is getting the weight up and like getting ready for that first rep. It is a pain in the butt, and that's a huge advantage of barbell. You just have to unrack it and then just do the rep. But with dumbbells, you kind of have to swing it up and catch it cleanly, otherwise you can get hurt or whatever. But then I moved on to squats again, and it had me work to 325. So I went from 350 for 5 sets of 3, and another 5 sets of 3 at 325. Again, with the first 2 sets, I did high bar, deep squats, and then I moved to low bar. But on the last set, because that was the last things of squats I was doing, I did an AMRAP and I got 6. And the AMRAP felt really, really good with it. If you check out my Instagram, you can see I said some funny stuff during my AMRAP, and just because I'm a goofball sometimes. But during my squats, I don't know what set it was. It was like second or third set. I went to write down that I did 3 reps, and I noticed that I didn't really see what I wrote, and it was because I started to get a migraine. If any of you have migraines, one of the symptoms, at least for me, and I think for some other people, is your vision gets kind of spotty and you start to see spots. When I wrote that, I was like, I didn't even see what I wrote, and I was like looking around, and my peripheral was like all like that weird, blight thing that you can't really see. So I was like, I'm gonna get a freaking migraine. And lo and behold, I finished all my squats before it hit. But then once I started doing my sumo deadlifts, it was full-blown headache. I felt like garbage, but I still managed to force myself to do deadlifts. And if any of you have a migraine, probably one of the worst things you can do is deadlift. But oddly enough, when I was like performing the actual deadlift, I had no headache, and also my like groin wasn't tight. But as soon as I finished, my groin was tight, my headache would come back, and it felt horrible to do. But I managed to get all my reps, and on my on that one I had 5 sets of 3 as well. I worked up to 475, which I think is 80% of my max. And the last set I did 5 reps because I was using straps. I just, because I had such a horrible headache, I didn't even want to try to do anything with a hook grip, so I just did them with all straps. I do want to do more of the hook grip in the future, obviously, just because it helps to develop it. But on that day, I was concerned with getting my reps done and then getting the heck out of there. And what I did once I left, because once I finished my sumo, I got all the weights off, which was a pain because I was feeling like garbage, and then just went home and on advisory with my mom, I double checked to make sure that ibuprofen wouldn't aggravate it, because I figured it would help, and it did. So I went back, had some whey protein, a piece of bread, so I had something solid. Then I had ibuprofen. I had cold coffee because I had some left over. So I had a cup of coffee, ibuprofen, and some food. And then I slept for like an hour. I woke up, migraine was 100% gone, which is wonderful because I had other stuff I had to do that night, and I wasn't about to go to bed at it was like 7:30 when I got back, or 7 o'clock when I got back, and then sleep the rest of the night. That would have not been very optimal, because my whole life can't be sleeping. But that was my Monday workout. So I got everything that I wanted to get done. I just ended on a horrible note with a migraine, but thankfully that was only temporary until I was able to get some sleep. So thankfully with migraines, I have like one a year at most. I've only had a handful of my life, but when I do, it's always been the same symptoms, where I just like can't see a little bit, and then it's just at like a half hour later, it just hits me with a headache, and then it goes away. Thankfully, I know a lot of people have crazy migraines, but I lucked out with that. On today's workout, ooh, that was a weird noise. I had good mornings, bent over rows were my 2 like big lifts that I had planned, and everything else was kind of Olympic lift based. But at good mornings, I decided to go crazy with them. I started with 225, and I did a set of 6 by accident, and then I moved up to 245, did a set of 5, up to 265, did a set of 5, up to 285, again did a set of 5, and then 305, I did a set of 3, and then I moved up to 315 and did a set of 3. The only reason I did 315 just so I could say I did 3 plates, and I was actually happy with how it felt. It was still moving well. My lower back was sore from the previous day, so that obviously didn't make it feel better, but I don't want to go crazy pushing good mornings like that, even though for whatever reason I'm really good at them. I think I don't see too many people doing 315 good mornings, but I want to focus on like that 5 rep range and really focusing on that. But I know I can actually like do a lot more weight than the 225 like I've been doing before. It's just kind of odd because I'm randomly built well for them, and it makes me nervous doing them because they feel awkward at times. But as I'm getting more comfortable with them and finding that good position on my back, then I'm able to do them better. What I find is like a low bar position, but like an extremely low bar position where I wouldn't normally squat, is optimal for those, where it allows me to get into a lower position and get a full range of motion, or at least as much range of motion as I can get without the bar flipping onto my head and decapitating me. So maybe it's something to try if you're doing good mornings. I've seen people do it like with a high bar position, and that just, it feels painful. It just doesn't feel good to do it up that high. And I like how it feels with the low bar, so I'm gonna keep doing it like that. But onto the bent over rows. All I did was 225. Worked up to 225, and I did 4 sets of 5, and the last one I did 10. And I kind of did it the Ed Cohn style, where I was letting my body kind of do a little bit of the work too. Once I started to fatigue, to kind of, jerk back a little bit or jerk up a little bit to get a little allow me to get a full range of motion on all my reps. But they weren't too bad, but my lower back was sore at that point, and I didn't want to completely destroy it doing those, because I wanted to do some snatches. And I actually PR'd twice, or on 2 different forms of the snatch today. On the overhead squat, which is obviously a form of the snatch, I got up to 145, and I did 1 rep, and it was ugly, but well, it wasn't too bad once I got it. I failed a couple times with it, and that's the thing with snatches and stuff, is like I can do it a whole bunch of times and I don't have to worry about like muscular fatigue. It's just really technique, and I'm just not very good at the technique. But as my technique gets better, then like I did 145 of like a snatch with like decent form on one, and like the other ones were garbage. But as I get better with form, my snatch is just going to go up because I have the leg strength. I mean, I can squat. I've done 430 before, so like the actual like strength portion of the snatch I won't have an issue with. It's just the mechanics and the balance of it is very difficult. But what I found is that if I'm going to do snatches, I'm not going to be able to catch it in a deep squat position, because it's just too awkward to balance in that position with the bar over me and just how I'm positioned. So I want to catch it either more parallel or kind of like a quarter squat and go from there. Basically with the snatch, I want to catch it as high as possible, because that makes it just a lot easier for me. But I still want to force myself to get under it more and not just do a power snatch or whatever the heck it would be called when you don't really squat under it. I still want to squat under it because that's going to allow me to do more weight, obviously. But I'm just not going to be able to catch it in that super low position, at least right now. I still want to work on that bottom position to see if I can learn it, because obviously I'm not doing anything with snatches or anything now, so I have a lot of time to experiment. So I'm not too worried about it, but it's something to mess around with. I'm not too overly concerned with it. But over the overhead snatches as well, I did some snatch work, and then some of them I tried some overhead squats as well. I was able to do 145. It was actually both a snatch and an overhead squat PR, both 145, and they felt decent when I do it. I mean, I know I have a lot more weight that I can do. It's just a lot of it's technique, and for me it's just working with heavier weights more often, and 145 is just not very heavy for my legs. So thankfully it's not like on an accessory day like I did today. It's not gonna like kill me to do them. It's just technique and balance and stability, which I think will have some carryover to my squats and deadlifts and stuff as well. Just having the balance and stability and the ability to do more difficult forms of squats and Olympic lifts and whatnot. I was going to do some push press and some spotto bench or rack bench or some variation of bench, but I decided not to. My pec minor was a little bit sore. Nothing crazy. It's just not worth pushing through on an accessory day like this, especially since I did other stuff as well. My upper body stuff has been feeling really good, so I'm not worried about going too crazy with it, especially on when it's already sore anyway. After I did that was all the lifting I did as far as weight training. Then I moved on. I did some sprints, and there was a basketball on the track. There was some kids doing baseball, and then a girl doing track, and it was like that. A whole bunch of people there. So I just did like basketball length sprints, and they have them in in my university's field house. I ended up like 12, and I did 4 regular sprints, 4 sideways like you're stealing a base, and obviously in different directions, and then 4 reaction sprints. So basically you stand just normal, and then you jump into kind of like that sprinter's position, then you go. And I did 4 of those as well. And then I did some jumping stuff after. And that was really that's my workout for the first 2 days of this week. Tomorrow I most likely won't be recording anything, because it will just be a very light accessory day, probably some shoulder and arm stuff, perhaps some calf work. even though my friends say I don't need to do any any calf work because I hit big calves. I like doing, you know, little things like that on a Wednesday, and perhaps do some cardio. I was thinking about doing some today, but my lower back's just kind of sore, so I'm gonna put it off till tomorrow and then do a little bit more. The sprint ended up being, I guess, my form of cardio, but I want to do some specific like cardio, and not just some anaerobic stuff, because it's something I actually got a little bit addicted to since I was doing my cut for powerlifting, for the powerlifting meet that I did. Just some steady state, nothing crazy. I'm not gonna go run a marathon or anything, that would feel like death, but just something. And whether it's stationary biking or walking, I don't really walk on the treadmill. I do a lot of stationary bike, or that, or just playing basketball. Those are really my two forms of cardio. I actually rather enjoy that, because when I sit on the stationary bike, I can just read and just not worry about like a specific distance or intensity or anything, just to get a little cardio. Because I mean, obviously it's beneficial. There's a lot of benefits to cardio, but I just rather enjoy that kind of like steady state, relaxing cardio. And I think it's good to have that planned, or at least structured into my program, so when I move to doing like a powerlifting meet or something, it's already kind of there. I don't have to add it to my workout. I just have to just change the intensity or change what I do with it. But I already have it kind of there, which is good. But yeah, that's my first 2 days of the workout. So let me know what you think of my first 2 days of stuff that I did. Obviously, you should be seeing clips and stuff overlaid throughout this video, at least if I decided to actually make a video. The next part of this video will be my last 2 days of the week that I have. I'll actually probably be morphed into 4, because my Wednesday is kind of just whatever day, so I may briefly touch upon that. And then Thursday's a heavy day, Friday's an accessory day, but the lighter version of, like, it's not going to be like a Tuesday accessory day, it's just going to be a kind of a whatever day, but it might be a little bit more than just arms. And then Saturday's another heavy day, so I'll probably talk all 4 of those days combined, since the Friday and Wednesday won't really be anything too crazy significant. But like I said, let me know what you think, and stay tuned for part 2.